The Soundtoys Devil-Loc might feel like a bit of a relic at this point. It has been around since 2012. In fact, it was one of the first plugins to try and capture the magic of the legendary Shure Level-Loc hardware. But then, finally, Korneff Audio swoops in with an officially licensed Level-Loc plugin. So the big question is, can an ancient plugin like the Devil-Loc still hang with something modern like the Level-Loc? Spoiler alert, it might just surprise you. Let's break it down. The hardware Level-Loc was originally designed as a mix leveler aimed at keeping audio levels super consistent. How? By using limiting. So yeah, technically it is a limiter. But what really set it apart and made it a studio favorite wasn't just the consistency. It's the way it distorts when you really push it. Tchad, the famous mixer, is particularly known for using the Level-Loc on countless tracks because of that unique, gritty character it brings to the table. Fun fact, Tchad is not only mentioned in the Devil-Loc manual, but is also heavily featured in the promo material for Korneff's Level-Loc. Small world, right? Now, let's first talk about extremes. When it comes to distortion, Devil-Loc really lets you crank things up to 11 without blinking an eye, but you will squint when you push it too far. This one can really distort. The Korneff Level-Loc does not give that amount of extreme boost right away. I ended up using a separate level, and even then you cannot get the extreme distortion of Devil-Loc. I'd love to see about 10 to 15 decibels of extra input level on the Korneff plugin to really push it. Now, I must say that with how extreme you can go with distortion on the Devil-Loc is not where you want to go in most cases. You normally end up with much lower amounts of saturation and distortion to get audible, pleasing results. The Korneff Level-Loc is overly complex for something that emulates such a straightforward hardware unit. You can adjust so much in the plugin and it's so easy to dial in a crappy sound. Soundtoys with the Devil-Loc made a smart decision to split the distortion and the leveling between two dials. And that is where the Devil-Loc still shines. It's so much easier to dial in a bit of crunch or a bit of slamming limiting. Now, before we continue, please make sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and hit that little like button. This video is sponsored by DistroKid. Cover songs is probably one of the many types of songs you would love to do, but uploading to a streaming platforms is always a hassle due to copyrights and required fee because you cover an original song. DistroKid makes this very easy for you by offering the option to do this all for you for $12 per song per year when you have a DistroKid subscription. Use my link in the description to get 7% off of your first year on a DistroKid. Now let's talk interface more. The Devil-Loc is simple, clean and to the point. Every one of the knobs has a clear purpose and it just works. The Korneff Level-Loc though, it's a lot more cluttered. In my opinion, there's a bit of a visual clash going on, especially with the old school look mixed in with all the extra functions and controls. I think it could have benefited with a more streamlined design. It would just make the whole thing feel less overwhelming. The trickability and the extra controls on the Level-Loc go to the extent that it sometimes becomes form over function. I mean, it's all fun to have to adjust 2 settings to change the release, but you could also have designed one dial with all the settings on it. It would have been much faster and user-friendly. Now with all that said, how do you get that crunchy sound on the Level-Loc? The settings I use to get that crunch are: input to the max with that higher boost with that extra plugin. The input is set to low microphone load, the output to aux. You can choose mic if you want. And most importantly, the slowest release time. You can go for battery instead of outlet power for some extra crunch. But be careful, the battery setting can cause sag if you push it too far. On the Devil-Loc, I just simply turn the crunch dial only. The extreme distortion is super useful when you dial it in with the mix control, especially for parallel processing. For example, it's perfect to add grit to drums while keeping their definition and punch. You can get the 2 plugins to give a very similar crunch and excitement when you use it in parallel. The Devil-Loc blend sounds in comparison darker. Now with saturation and plugins you can always have aliasing, and the Level-Loc handles it well. It includes oversampling options to keep things clean. The Devil-Loc on the other hand aliases like crazy. The plugin is really showing its age here. Now to counter some of that harsh, distorted, aliased sound, the Devil-Loc has a low-pass filter. The Level-Loc has this as well, but also a high-pass filter, and both are available on different parts of the plugin. Now the other big part of the original Level-Loc hardware is its limiting capabilities. And here is where the Korneff, in my opinion, outperforms the Devil-Loc. The Devil-Loc gives you 2 release settings and the crush dial. It's a lot more of a hit or miss type of situation. The releases are around 100 milliseconds for slow and 47 milliseconds for fast. The Korneff Level-Loc has both of these as well, but you get a total of 8 release timings with those funky release time switches. The huge adjustability of the Level-Loc makes that you can really dial in the limiting. The hit or miss aspect is almost not there as long as you know what you are doing. I found this to be the most fail-safe way. Start with the release at its slowest and make it shorter until it starts to sound too jumpy. Then dial it back a bit. Now, the very snappy attack is a lot most of the time, unless you don't dial in the thresholds or input gain too much, but where's the fun in that? Now, I have to note that with both plugins, you absolutely want to use the mix dial, because the limiting on both can be very extreme and slamming. The Devil-Loc shines in its simplicity, and the Level-Loc has a less aliased sound with a lot more control. But as always, try them out to find out which one will fit in your audio toolshed.